Hello chess friends and welcome to Jozarov Chess Channel and welcome back to the FIDE Candidates in 2024 that's going on now in Toronto in Canada. We're now in a very dynamic stage of the tournament. We're now in the round 11, and before this round the leaders were the grandmasters Gukesh and Jan Nepomniachtchi. Both of them before the round 11 had 6 points, but today Gukesh had to play with the white pieces against Fabiano Caruana and the game ended with a draw, so it means that Gukesh has now 6.5 points, and also Jan Nepomniachtchi is still currently playing and he has, I think, also certain drawish position, I would say. So I could say this game should probably end also with a draw, which means that probably after 11 rounds also Jan Nepomniachtchi will have 6.5 points, which gave here Hikaru Nakamura a great opportunity with the win to catch up with the leaders, but also for Rameshbabu Praggnanandhaa, who was 1 point behind them, to also catch up with the leaders. So it was a very intense game between Rameshbabu Praggnanandhaa and Hikaru Nakamura, really one of the decisive games of this epic chess tournament. So let's see now what happened. The game finished a couple of minutes ago. In my opinion, crazy game. So with the white pieces, Praggnanandhaa opened with the move d4. We have d5 by Hikaru Nakamura, knight to f3, knight to f6. We have now the symmetrical variation of the queen's pawn game, and now after move c4, here already a surprise element by Hikaru Nakamura going into the ideas of the Austrian defense with the move c5. Also certain ideas of the Tarash defense we can see here, and usually you're playing maybe here in the beginning d4 d5 c4 c5 is the usual Austrian defense. Here in this particular case the difference is that the knights were out, but I would still call it, I think, I would say it's really sideline of the Austrian defense. Black is searching immediately for a clarification in the center of the board, and one of the best ways to somehow handle dynamics in the center of the board is, of course, to undermine the pressure like Praggnanandhaa that did here with the move c takes d5, c takes d4 also by Hikaru, queen takes d4, queen takes d5, knight to c3, and queen takes d4, knight takes d4. The queens are off the board. The game is not so dynamic, the game is not so complicated, but of course white has the advantage that white has also brought now 2 minor pieces in the game. The knights are out, and there are some ideas to play knight to b5 and maybe hit the weak c7 square. So that's why a6 by Hikaru, not allowing that, but now also good move by Praggnanandhaa. g3, trying of course to play bishop to g2, not allow here a certain expansion by black with the move b5. This would be then very tough to handle for black. So that's why here Hikaru plays the most aggressive line with the move e5, knight to b3, knight to c6, and now after move bishop to g2 by Praggnanandhaa, here comes a beautiful idea which has been played many times in chess history. I think it's a common theme of this preparation by black to play a5. You want to also play a4 and expand simply on the queen side. And now there are several ways how white can proceed here. One of the most popular ways that has been played in chess history is this idea, knight to a4, with the idea maybe to attack the b6 weakness, also in some lights maybe attack the c5 weakness. But the games that I see in the database, all of them are have ended with a draw. Black is simply continuing with bishop to b4, simplifies the game by trading off the bishop and maybe castles, and goes, I think, again into an equal line. What the Stockfish, for instance, engine suggests here for white is to play the move bishop to e3, which surprisingly has never been played so far in chess history. This would be a certain theoretical novelty, but black will still continue with a4. Then you play something like knight to c5, but at least you have something. You have at least your knight on the other side of the board. Knight to g4 in these types of positions is not so good because white will simply take out the pawn. You could maybe lose the bishop, and you could have maybe here messed up pawn structure, but after something like bishop to e6 castling, and white is slightly better. So after knight to c5, here black should not go with knight to g4, should simply continue with a3. Then after b takes a3, knight to d4 is here a liberating line for black. This wasn't played in the game, but I wanted to show you how still this position can be complicated. Look at this, with the threat to play knight to c2, you maybe take, and now knight to b5. You're trying again the fork. Then we play something like rook to a5, hitting both of the knights, knight to c7. So I really don't want to dive into this line too much, but it's still, I think, a complicated game. Instead of this move bishop to e3, and instead of this move knight to a4, Praggnanandhaa went also into a theoretical novelty with the move knight to b5. But Stockfish says here that the position should be equal. Although it seems so that there is this problem about the square c7 here. Hikaru plays again on the same pattern, on the same motif, bishop to b4, bishop to d2, and now king to e7, which is a good move. Not to castle immediately here, getting out of this mess. I think here king to e7 is a good move because the game could reach in maybe, I don't know, 10-50 moves, the fully endgame stage, and then you want to have your king in the center of the board. You don't want to have your king maybe on the king side. Then it's a long run to get the king back again into the center of the board. So that's why I liked here Hikaru's choice, king to e7. Without the queens on the board, as we said, the game is not so complicated, so you don't have to worry so much about your king in the center here. King to e7, great move. a3 by Pragg. We have bishop takes d2, and now knight to d2. Again, we have really in equal position. a4 by Hikaru. He gets at least a beautiful space advantage. He has at least some attacking chances here on this side of the board. Knight to c4 by Pragg. Now Pragg uses a good squares also for the knight, and is now targeting the b6 weakness, and also in some lines maybe the d6 weakness that's of course left behind in black's position. We have now bishop to e6. Hikaru continues the pressure, and now you see knight to d6. Many of us would play, seems tempting. You're attacking also the weak pawn on b7. The knight is lined up, but actually black can defend this with this idea. Rook to a5. You cannot take, of course, because first of all we'll simply pick up the knight here. Then there's also the b2 pawn. You could maybe try rook to d1, then rook to d8. You're trying rook to d2, protect maybe everything, but now e4 disconnects here the attack by the bishop against this knight. You try f3, knight to d5. You also disconnect the defense of the rook against the knight. I don't know, you can try maybe knight to b7, takes, and in this line white will only gain, I would say here, the rook for two minor pieces here. Black should be much better. So here, although tempting, knight to d6 would not be a good continuation here for white. So that's why rook to c1. Pragg simply defends the knight. We have now rook to a6. Here Hikaru connects now finally the rook to the knight on c6. Kingside castling by Pragg. We have a rook to d8, occupying now the d file, and now knight to e3. We have now rook to a5, hitting the knight, and now comes, I would say, the first really critical moment of the game. Here Pragg plays, I would even dare to say here, tiny little inaccuracy. He plays bishop takes c6. Seems again tempting. You're getting a messed up pawn structure. You get an isolated pawn. But here the problem is after I don't know, b takes c6. Your knight is hanging. You have to lose the tempo, so the knight doesn't have so many good squares. You have to again retreat to c3. Instead of this move bishop to c6, what Pragg should have played was the move knight to c7. This would be now the optimal way, hitting simply the bishop on e6 after something like knight to d4, attacking the e2 pawn. Very complicated line still. I'm not sure how many of us would even dare to play with the knight somewhere like on c7. Then you play still knight takes e6. If you play knight to e2, then we get out of this mess. You pick up here maybe the knight with the king, but then the rook is coming here on the c file, and there are many targets here. You're trying maybe, I don't know, something like this. We simply pick up this one. Messed up game here. If you try here f takes e6, then again rook to c7, covers, takes. This will be even a better maybe line for black. Rook to b5, takes, and again I think this should be a pretty equal position. I think the game should end with a draw, but I think this line is clearer because many pieces have been traded off now. Many simplifications are there, so not a complicated game I think anymore to play for both sides. But after bishop to c6, actually the game becomes a little bit complicated because after, as we said, b takes c6, knight to c3, there is now the open b file, and the issue is now that the d5 square is taken for the knight. You would love maybe to get your knight somewhere here in the center of the board, but it's simply not working. Here Hikaru plays a stunning move, bishop to b3, great idea, not allowing here Pragg to compete on the d file. But again, nothing lost or something for Pragg here, but suddenly I think Hikaru Nakamura gets a beautiful piece activity. He can really breathe again in the position. The rooks are active. The white rooks cannot be activated. So here Pragg tried to reroute the knight to get the knight somehow in a different way into the game. We have rook to a6, f4. Pragg is searching for opportunities to open a position on the king side. And now Hikaru plays another beautiful move, e4, gets again a new space advantage now, but in the center of the board. So now suddenly I think Pragg is a little bit pushed away by a white pawn here in the center, but also on the queen side. We have king to f2, rook to b6, knight to c3. So you see Pragg doesn't know where to go with the knight, and that's exactly a good here thematic play by Hikaru, how to play against knights. You have to restrict them. You don't allow the knight to find active squares all over the board. Of course, maybe white would search for the c5 square, if possible, even for the c4 square. But you see, Hikaru has everything under control. The knights are basically paralyzed. They're simply out of game. So we have now g6, rook to b1, and now knight to d5. Good move. If you take, of course, then you just improve the pawn structure of blacks, and then the pawns are rolling here simply in the center of the board. So that's why rook from b to c1. We have f5, g4 by Pragg. G4 is a good move, trying somehow to open a position on the king side. And here Hikaru plays f takes g4. Great move, although now this pawn is hanging. But the problem is now you cannot take the pawn on e4. Hikaru calculated everything in a really good way here. Knight to e4 would be very dangerous because of rook to f8. The king is lined up, and now you try maybe f5 takes, you step back, and I think in the next couple of moves this pawn is rolling. So very unpleasant position now to handle here for Pragg. So that's why after f takes g4 he took the g4 pawn. And now we have knight takes f4. Hikaru gained the pawn here, and now comes really the critical moment of the game. Here, Praggnanandhaa made a huge blunder. He played now the move king to e3. Let's see different options for Pragg. If you play now knight takes e4, we have seen that rook to f8 is very dangerous. You're trying to escape, then you get check, king to d2, another check, you have to step back, bishop comes, you have to play something like here, rook to d5, and again, black gains a huge activity, has access to the e3 square. The Stockfish engine, for instance, in this particular position, evaluates this position as +3 in black's favor. So you see, you still cannot pick up the pawn on e4 because of the tensions, the problems on the f file. So here, the best choice actually for Pragg would have been to play king to e1, attacking simply the knight, and you're trying maybe something like knight to e6 to escape. Now you attack the pawn twice, and of course black can push the pawn, but now you attack it again, and now after something like knight to e3, rook to h4, you can defend with rook to f2, and this was the way to go here for Pragg. This was the way to defend the position. But instead of knight to e4, which could have been maybe played, but as I said, really risky, and king to e1, which was the optimal way, here Pragg made a huge mistake with king to e3, and now the real fun starts. Now Hikaru smells some blood. He's saying your king is in the center, let's open now somehow the position. What should you do? If you play here, I don't know, takes, then again we see that the pawn structure is improved. So again, two connected pawns would be very dangerous to handle. So here Hikaru took the pawn on e4, but now comes knight takes c3. Here black is much better, although the optimal way is here maybe to play c5, getting this rook immediately into the game. You're trying maybe something like king to f3, then we play h5, kicking away the knight. You attack the knight, knight retreats, you take, and now this rook is coming into the game. Look at this, you have to escape. We deliver a new check, you take the rook, and now you take the pawn. This one is hanging. Again, a complicated game here for white. I wouldn't even dare to say black is winning in this endgame. So after king to e4, after knight to c3 by Hikaru, as we saw, c5 was also an option. We have b takes c3. You cannot play rook takes c3 here because of bishop to d5 check, and then you lose the pawn on b2. So that's why b takes c3. But you see now, all of the pawns by Pragg now are isolated pawns. They're simply an easy object of the attack by black. So here Hikaru sees now the move c5, good move, activating the rook. You see the king is really endangered, and now comes another blunder here by Pragg. He plays now the move rook to f4. Here he had to somehow escape to f3 with the king. You have to get out of this mess. The rooks are simply too dangerous on the d and e file, and still h5 could happen. You're trying something like this, then the rook is coming. Look at it, it's very tough to defend. Knight to d3, you're getting a check, and again this idea we take, and then again you lose the pawn on e2. So similar line, but again, in any scenario, white is losing the pawn. But after rook to f4, which is even worse, now we have bishop to d5, we have king to e3 by Hikaru, and now h5. Suddenly, the knight is out of game. Here, Pragg is trying to battle with c4, but of course, Hikaru is staying on his diagonal. It's not allowing the king to escape to f3 here. After move bishop to a8, the problem is now you don't have a good retreating square. You can maybe play, look at this, knight to f2, h5 was a brilliant move by Hikaru. If you play now knight to f2, look what happens. Check, you have to cover now yourself. Now we play rook to d4, and the knight will be lost. So really, really crazy. If you play here knight to e5, again, rook to e6, and you cannot defend here the piece. You don't have access with the king here to e4 or d4. You cannot play with the rook, then you lose the exchange. Again, a messed up position. So that's why Pragg, after the brilliant h5 by Hikaru, as we saw, c4 retreating, and now he was forced to play knight to h6. But now the knight is really out of game here. Hikaru plays a beautiful king, a rook to e6, attacking the king, and now a rook to f6. After king to g3, now Hikaru goes for the knight, and I would even dare to say it, game over here for Pragg. Pragg tried to battle. He delivered a check, tried to get some pawns here for the knight, but Hikaru kept it calm, protects this one, simply activates the bishop further, wants of course to go for the c4 pawn. Here Pragg plays king to f4, but now bishop to a6. Hikaru attacks simply the piece, deflects simply again the rook from the defense of the pawn. Bishop takes d4, a couple of checks by Pragg, but now a good move also by Hikaru, cutting off any activity by the king, maybe on the 6th rank, threatening some checkmates and similar stuff. So good defensive move here by Hikaru. King to f5, bishop to f7, king to e5, and now Hikaru pushed the pawn further, delivers a new check. Pragg goes here, but now rook to d3, again a brilliant move. If you take, of course, then the pawn is rolling, and game over for white. Here Pragg tried king to b4, rook to b3, after king to a4 and rook to g3. In this particular position, Rameshbabu Praggnanandhaa resigned. So the problem is, of course, after h takes g3, this pawn is rolling, and you don't have access to the b3 square. You can just go behind, and this pawn is marching, and it would be, of course, a promotion of the queen, and game over here for the young prodigy from India, Rameshbabu Praggnanandhaa. So tough loss for Pragg, but these are the candidates. Everyone can beat everyone, and Hikaru is really, really now back in the tournament. Hikaru, with his play in the last couple of rounds, I think now that he's even the favorite to win this one, because Hikaru is playing surprise elements. He's playing very aggressive chess. You see, Praggnanandhaa didn't find the best solutions to this tricky opening. We could say in the beginning it was not maybe the most popular opening that's played in grandmaster level, but Hikaru surprised here Rameshbabu Praggnanandhaa with the black pieces in such a spectacular game. He activated the pieces, trapped the knight, and as I said, is now sharing the first place with Gukesh. So we're waiting still with the game Vidit Santosh-Gurasi against Jan Nepomniachtchi. If Jan wins somehow the game, he would be the leader, but I think when I last watched the game was drawish. So with the draw, then we would have 3 leaders in this amazing chess tournament. So okay, I hope that you enjoyed the game. Really, really crazy game between Pragg and Hikaru Nakamura. If you want to see some other games that we have covered here from this event, check out our commented chess games. And if you like this content, hit the subscribe button. See you soon with some more videos. And what do we say in the end? Chess is the best, of course.